What is up, Earthnoids and Spacenoids? I am just a simple new type, and in this episode, we will be returning to Universal Century in the final month of the One-Year War. In this story, we will follow our protagonist, Leopold Fieseller, an agent for the Public Peace Department, as he stumbles onto an assassination plan on Gihren Zabi. This episode will cover Volume 1 of Mobile Suit Gundam, the plot to Assassinate Gihren. If you are into mystery and political intrigue, this will be the manga for you. Let's not waste any time, and let's get into this. We start this story with your typical summary of Universal Century. In UC 0068, Zeon Zoom Daikun dies, and the Zabis secede from EFF to form the Principality of Zeon. The One-Year War takes place, and the rest is history. The war is now over, and UC 0080 is just starting. But on Side 3, the Federation was slowly declassifying documents and opening up the truth of what happened at the end of the war. This data shared regarding the former Zeon was all collected by the former Principality of Zeon National Public Safety and Peace Department investigator Leopold Fieseller. The story works as you, the viewer, getting the declassified information, so what we are seeing are things happening in the past. The story begins in December of UC 0079, where a series of terrorist bombings occurred. Side 3, Zoom City, December 26th. Kei Takiguchi is leaving a spaceport in an Uber when suddenly the car explodes. Later, a middle-aged man is watching the news coverage of the incident. This is Leopold Fieseller. He makes a very important offhanded comment here. He says that you can now receive underground broadcasts even at the capital. This assumes that at one point the Zabis had full control over their media coverage, and now that it is December and things are starting to fall apart for Zeon, it seems they are unable to keep a certain level of control. Leopold notes that it is the fourth hit this week, and he wonders why. December 25th, UC 0079. A Zoom meeting is taking place. A mysterious person named Regenleaf is the ringleader behind the group Valkyrie. Really, Valkyrie? A little on the nose there, don't you think? Operation Valkyrie was an assassination attempt on Adolf Hitler. There is even a Tom Cruise movie about it. This isn't as clever as the writers think it is. One member named Hefiator notes that Solomon has fallen, and so has Dozel Zabi. Valkyrie intended to assassinate Dozel Zabi, but his death on the battlefield speeds things up for them. They decide to proceed straight to their final plan. Their next target will be Commander Gihren Zabi. One man takes off a VR headset. This is Hefiator, and he has ended the Valkyrie meeting. He looks out to the Zabi's castle. Leopold crashes on his bed. He has the stereotypical "I am too busy with my work, so my room's a mess" look going on. As he closes his eyes, his childhood friend Elsie calls and tells him that she has info, and she has to give it to him in person. She wants to meet for dinner. It has been 3 years since they've seen one another and are happy when their paths cross. She says he seems to have an attitude, but he blames it on the case he is currently working on. Elsie gives Leopold an SD card and thinks that this information might be helpful to his case. He puts the memory card in his phone and sees a Valkyrie login page. Luckily, the person this data belonged to was sloppy and used an auto login tool. Leopold logs in and sees all the data regarding assassinations. It all seems to match with the assassinations that have already occurred. She says keep looking. At the bottom of the list is Gihren Zabi's name, but the date of the assassination is TBD. Elsie tells him that she found it at the Principality Defense Division member Rigel von Moore's office. She simply found it on the floor. Leopold takes a long drag of his cigarette. Moore's commanding officer is Brigadier General Henry, who is in charge of the Capital Defense Battalion. Zeon has 800 soldiers assigned to just the capital. He then stumbles onto the name Regenleaf and wonders who this could be. Leopold swears he has heard that name before. He suggests that Elsie just give it to her commanding officer and let the chain of command happen. That is when she admits that she actually stole it. Her commanding officer is Cecilia Irene, who is Commander Gihren's private secretary. He realizes that Elsie really didn't want to see Leopold and just wanted to help her fascist boss from being killed. She pleads with him to help. Leopold sighs and takes a long drag of his cigarette. As the two walk down the street, a car pulls up behind them. It is a man named Lance Garfield. Leopold refers to him as Sensei Lance. He gets out of the car and introduces himself to Elsie. When he gets out, we see that he has only one arm. Even Leopold is surprised. Lance says that he knew of the dangers when he enlisted. Lance tells the two that he was recently transferred to Brigadier General Henry's battalion. The two look at him with a weird look. Leopold asks for a ride to his work from Lance. He apologized to Elsie for abandoning her. She, of course, is not very very happy. Leopold asks if Solomon really fell. Once Odessa fell, he thought this day would come, but it is still uncomforting to him. He gives Lance a cigarette. He is ultimately a lazy person, and once he got an easy office job, he started coasting in life. Now that he is leading this investigation, he can no longer be the lazy person he wants to be. Lance talks about the Defense Battalion. It seems to be what is called a good work squad, which is a squad made up of soldiers who have a hard time returning to society because of their injuries. Even though the battalion is a front, they will still defend the capital with their lives if necessary. He drops Leopold off at his job. Leopold keeps referring to him as sir, and Lance tells him to stop. We learn that Lance was his former flight instructor and that he actually flunked him out of pilot training. He thanks Lance and tells him that if he didn't fail him, he would probably have died in Odessa. When he enters the building, he sees one of his coworkers, Jean-Marie Socrates, is still up and working. He is investigating Mario Antonescu, a former Zionic scientist. It seems he has no public records, but he was just found dead. It wasn't a bombing, however. It was an assassination. Shot right in the face. His coworker is there late because the cops don't have any data on the man either, and they came to the public peace department for help. The only info on him is that he has traveled back and forth between Side 3 and Granada. Jean refers to him as the heir to Zionic. Leopold tells him that his grandfather was a founding member and wants nothing to do with it. He goes to his desk and sees a piece of mail. He looks at the seal of the letter to see the Valkyrie logo. Someone knows that he knows. Valkyrie is having another Zoom meeting. They say the Gondor has fallen. This appears to be the same man as Mario Antonescu by a different name. They say they will make their attack on Gihren on December 31st. Before the Battle of Abawaku, Gihren is planning on returning to Zoom City and having an inspection parade to boost morale. Leopold is in the crime laboratory investigation section. A scientist comes and tells him that the only fingerprints on the letter were the mailman. The contents of the letter is this. I will just put it up on the screen. It is signed by Regenleaf. He complains that he is going to be up all night. As he is out for a walk, his phone with the leaked data updates. He looks at it to see that Gihren assassination has been set for New Year's Eve. He drops his cigarette. December 27th, Command HQ. Cecilia Irene is briefing Brigadier General Henry Slesser and Communications Commander Rigel von Moore. She informs the two that the Zabi family plans on announcing the news of Dozel's death tomorrow on the 28th. She also tells General Henry to bring his brigade to the parade. She also says that Gihren's personal army will be in charge during the parade. On the Guazing-class ship, the Guarib. I'm gonna go with Guarib. Brigadier General Twanning approaches Caecilia Zabi's headquarters. Twanning and Caecilia discuss battle tactics regarding Abawaku. Twanning also suggests that Gihren and Caecilia put aside their rivalry for now. Caecilia is informed that Mario Antonescu has been assassinated. It seems that the elite guard killed Mario, and that the elite guard is backed by Gihren, of course. Caecilia begins her own plotting. Another name that was on the bizarre letter was David Schiller. Leopold asks Jean if he knows anything regarding that name. Jean tells him that David was a former agent at the Public Safety and Peace Department. He was great at his job. One day he was assigned to investigate an assassination of Gihren, and he suddenly vanished. His family was also a part of an anti-Zabi faction. He casually tells Leopold that he finds it suspicious that David's boss is currently Leopold's boss, and that all the data on him just up and vanishes. Leopold goes to the archives and views a video where he thought he heard the name Regenleaf. He watches a recording of a hostile interrogation happening by Zeon soldiers and not happening by the peace department. They give the victim a drug to spill the beans, but he ends up convulsing on the ground. Leopold amplifies the audio and hears that the victim says Ginleaf over and over, as in Regenleaf. Cecilia and Elsie make their way to the Department of Public Peace. At Command HQ, General Henry summons Lance. He shows him information regarding Leopold and wants to know his relationship with Lance. He tells him how he failed his mobile suit pilot aptitude tests. He tells General Henry that he invited Leopold to the officers' club as he seemed interested in the battalion. Back at the Department of Public Peace, Jean tells Leopold that Cecilia, along with the chief and the director, wants to meet with him, but he changes his stinky clothes first. He arrives at the meeting. Barry Edmond is the director of public safety. Leopold gives a briefing regarding the data disk that Elsie found, but he is pretending that he stumbled onto it. He tells Cecilia that the disk contains the date of the assassination and is using a communications protocol that is typical typically used by rebels. He then shows everyone the letter that he received earlier. Because of the name David Schiller, he believes he understands the scrambled text. Leopold briefly explains the former assassination attempt on Gihren. 1,242 people were investigated and 74 were arrested. Of those 74, they found out that there were 4 ringleaders. Hans Ladner was a palace guard. Alexander Trauner was a court reporter for the Federation Post, which no longer exists. Park Jun-sun was the palace physician. And finally, Wasily Strogatsky was an employee of the former government before it became Command HQ. They were all executed. The letters in the note is their initials, and the numbers represent their date of execution. Also, Leopold notes that David's investigation was kept secret to the public, meaning that someone within the Department of Public Peace or higher up in Xi'an knows everything going on that the public doesn't know about. He has a hunch that what happened to David Schiller may be happening to him. He wants to be able to see the classified files on David Schiller. Barry tells him that he can't make this happen. He will set up an urgent meeting for Parliament to make the documents declassified, but he can't do anything until then. Meanwhile, at the parade grounds, Lance and the Capital Defense Brigade is testing their Zaku Kais. The MS-06FZ Zaku 2 Kai is a renovation of the Zaku F2 type. The armor has also been considerably strengthened and the armaments have been redesigned, so it does not lag behind the Federation's GIM. The cockpit was improved greatly to a point that rookie pilots can handle it with ease. Usually you would see the typical Zaku style head, but these particular units use the Fritz helmet. Its German-inspired looks isn't just aesthetics though. The lip was designed to allow pilots to pop open the hood if their units are down. It can be equipped with the Sturmfaust, Heat Hawk, Heat Sword, Zaku Bazooka, a 120mm machine gun, hand grenades, and its iconic shoulder shield. This was also Bernie's unit in War in the Pocket. He gets a call from General Henry and informs him that there were 2 traitors in their midst. He tells the 2 names to Lance, but we the reader do not hear it. He goes out and obeys orders. Back at the Department of Public Peace, the chief tells Leopold to come with him. They head down to the lowest level of the building. He opens the door to a computer and a bunch of filing cabinets. He tells Leopold that all of the nation's secrets exist here. He gives him 2 hours to do what he needs to do. In a parliament meeting to give more money and power to Gihren, Darcia Baharo, the prime minister of the Principality of Xi'an, shows up late. He and Gihren do not get along. He mentions that he should have fought for Mahal hard. What is Mahal? Mahal, also known as Colony 38, is a Side 3 colony that was eventually turned into the Solar Ray. Apparently, the reason Chima went turncoat on Delaz in UC-0083 is also because Mahal was her home colony and she held a grudge for its destruction. Yeah, that tracks for her. Darcia says that he is a puppet of Gihren, unfortunately, and that he brings up a great point. Most people get comfortable and lazy very easy, but this is especially true to Xi'an, being the underdog who seceded from the nation. To Xi'an, they are the revolutionaries in this situation. At least to the older people of Xi'an, they already did the work, and now they just want to get comfortable in their status in life. They did it. They created their own nation. Now just get comfortable and let your children fight your wars. Darcia believes this is the crux of his nation. Back at the department, Leopold finds David's report on Regenleaf. It is dated December 27th, UC-0078, exactly 1 year ago to date. The files show they were watching Xi'an Zum Daikum even before the Principality of Xi'an was formed. It also suggests that Xi'an Zum Daikum might have been assassinated. If you watch Mobile Suit Gundam, Daikum's death is very much a mystery. In Origin, it is more suggested that the Zabis assassinated him. They also made him look like a crazy man in Origin, which I wasn't a fan of. Leopold thinks that someone has been hiding in the shadows since Xi'an was still a republic. There is another code in the file. Leopold uses the numbers, finds a date, and matches it to a file that should have all the information. He puts the file in the computer, but the file has been deleted. He accesses the log files and notices that the last person to touch it was David Schiller. There is no doubt about it. He is Regenleaf. Suddenly, the chief comes in with Xi'an soldiers and arrests him for leaking classified information. The chief set him up. Chief Morgan says that the darkness of this nation is very deep. December 27th, UC-0079. Gihren is giving his Solomon speech. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Darcia Baharo, and Vice Prime Minister Oleg are meeting in what looks like an empty parliament. Behind him is a statue of Xi'an Zum Daikum. Inside is a shrine to the fallen, including the Zabi family. Darcia believes that his country lost its future once Garma Zabi died. He was the hopeful future that the Principality of Xi'an needed, and we see that Degwin knows this. Once Garma was dead, he lost all hope. I think what Darcia is saying is absolutely reflecting Degwin's inner thoughts. This is shown to us, the viewer, as Degwin is constantly listening to old voice recordings of Garma. Is this manga making me empathize with Degwin? Oleg says, what about Minerva Zabi? Currently, the Zabi family is being torn apart by Fieseller and Gihren, the two remaining Zabis. Darchia is unsure if she will be influenced by Fieseller or Gihren, but both options seem like a bad choice. Of course, we know that the two Zabis will be killed at a Bawaku. He also briefly mentions that Fieseller seems to be on the side of her father, bringing peace through surrendering. Oleg wonders why he is telling him all this knowledge, as he could go and tell Gihren's elite guard. Darchia seems to be over it. He leaves everything in the hands of Oleg as he heads to the moon. As he leaves, Oleg mentions one more name. What about Maharaja Khan? Darchia states that he will never leave the moon. Now who is this? Maharaja Khan is the father of Faman Khan, who will go on to lead Neo-Zeon. He led an exodus of Zeon soldiers to Axis during the fall of Bawaku. Luckily for the Zabi family, Maharaja remained loyal. Darchia leaves for the moon. Valkyrie has another meaning. The team is concerned that 2 members have been killed, but they don't know why. Specifically, a man named Hrist is concerned. Regenleaf says that he can't say why, as it would give away their identities, and he swore to never do that. Regenleaf asks Hrist to trust him. He says that he trusts Regenleaf simply because Heviator trusts Regenleaf. So for now, the trust is mutual. The conference ends and the man takes off his VR headset to reveal that it is Lance. We cut back to Gihren's Solomon speech being broadcasted to the Earth sphere. He is letting the world know of the death of Dozul Zabi. Elsie goes to Leopold's desk and wonder if he's okay. Leo is in jail after getting set up by the chief. He keeps replaying the events in his head. He wonders if David Schiller is really Regenleaf. Outside of his cell, a man is watching over him. Another man approaches him and gives him tickets to an opera that only royalty and the rich can attain. He tells the man he was never here and enters the cell. It is Jean-Marie Socrates. He told Leopold that there was something suspicious about the chief. He gives him a cigarette as well as a key sensor. He tells him to use this on the door 15 minutes after he leaves. Also, he pulls out a fake gun and gives it to him. He heads out and wishes him luck. Barry Edmund and Billy Morgan are meeting with one another. They appear to be members of Valkyrie. Barry doesn't want to kill Leo and will wait after December 31st, after their assassination attempt happens. They are more concerned that someone sent Leo information about Valkyrie and that there is someone out there that knows information about what happened to David Schiller. Billy says that the only people who know are himself, Barry, Regenleaf, and Schiller. And with the best dramatic timing ever, boom, an explosion goes off and the two are killed. Outside of the building, Jean-Marie Socrates is shocked. This was not part of his plan and wonders if Schiller had anything to do with it. The plot thickens. Leo goes up to the door and asks the guard what is going on. The guard leaves to assess the situation. Leo decides to use the key sensor. How this works is he places it up to the door and it slowly decodes the 6-digit pin. He decodes 5 digits. Only 1 is left, when suddenly the power goes out and the key sensor fails. He is stuck. Cecilia is in a meeting and having another briefing regarding the battle tactics of the battalion for the parade. One officer mentions that the handicaps of the pilots wouldn't stand a chance in real battle. Cecilia gets a visit from Lieutenant Colonel Eric Mansfield. He is the captain of the Royal Guard and is rocking an amazing 80s mullet. He tells her that he is off to Bawaku. He wonders why they don't take the battalion more seriously, as they may be injured physically and mentally, but they are hardened soldiers. He sees the battalion for who they truly are, unlike all of the officers currently in the room who dismisses Mansfield. He leaves his right-hand man, Phileas Stream, and some of the elite guards on side 3 as he takes off. Back in jail, Leo is getting frustrated about the power and throws the sensor key right as the power returns. Talk about bad timing. He hears someone yelling outside when suddenly the door opens. It is the guard, but he didn't open the door. It appears that the sensor key worked once the power came back on. They look at each other awkwardly before Leo tackles him and he tries to bail. Later that night at the Royal Opera House, Major General Lautrec Hamilton is meeting with Brigadier General Henry Slessor. Slessor tells Lautrec that he has reached the point of no return. He's being very coy, but he wants Lautrec to join in his espionage adventures in assassinating Gihren. The Major General declines, but isn't going to do anything about it and merely will be a spectator. Again, both are dancing around the bush, not being truly upfront with one another for fear of treason, I imagine. Everyone gets up and applauds. It is Degwin Sotozabi in the royal box. It is the first time that he has been seen in public since the death of Garma. Lautrec uses the opera theater as a metaphor. He tells Slessor to look at the Toto family. They were in ruins until one day they decided to adopt a young boy. This solved their heir problem as well as brought them fortune and actually helped them gain influence once again. The young boy adopted happens to be Glimmy Toto. This name hasn't been mentioned yet, but he will play a role in Neo Zeon once we get to Mobile Suit Gundam Double Z. He also notes that since Ramba Rao has died, the Rao family no longer exists, and their box at the theater goes to a new family. Furthermore, he mentions that the Sahaline family no longer has a box at the theater either. This, of course, is referencing the relatives of Aina and Gineas, who we meet in 8th MS Team. Lots of fun little Easter eggs in this conversation, but ultimately, the Major General is saying that he loves to watch the political drama play out, and he won't get in his way. This is great. We cut back to Leo, who was actually losing against the guard and failing to escape. Jean-Marie Socrates has to come in and judo chop the guard. He tells Leo to get out of here while also calling the chief and telling him that Leo escaped. He has to maintain the illusion that he isn't involved, I suppose. He tells Leo to go visit Henry. If you remember, Henry was the forensic scientist who looked over the package that Leo received by Valkyrie. He goes to visit Henry, and he shows Leo that he finished analyzing the Valkyrie disc. Henry puts his hands up and nods at the security camera. Leo finally understands and pulls out the fake gun and makes it seem like he is getting this information by force. He tells Leo that the disc runs on the Zeonic operating system Harmony, but he then found a computer language that he never seen before. However, upon further analysis, he found an emulator that runs random software and was able to find a link to an old EFF operating system designed to be used as an operating system for a colony. These scientists were later all drafted into the army. He gives Leo the names of the scientists. It is only 5 people. One of these people was Mario Antonescu, which was the mysterious scientist that was assassinated recently. They all seem to be stationed at Granada and may have joined MIP. Remember, MIP is a small weapons development company that is responsible for Zeon's megaparticle cannons as well as the Bigro. He gives all the data and puts it on a flash drive. Henry tells Leo he now has to pretend to knock him out. Leo proceeds to actually hit him in the head and runs away. Elsie is outside waiting to pick him up. Leo says that he needs to contact someone named Reinhardt. He goes to a store where they sell Gunpla. They sell Gunpla mobile suits inside of Universal Century? Who's the one getting all that money? He gives the store clerk a cryptic message about wanting a specific model. This, of course, is a coded message to contact Reinhardt. His phone suddenly rings, and a messenger tells him to meet at the cafe in front of the old Daikun mansion. He goes to the cafe and meets with Reinhardt. The two don't face each other. She gives him an old photo of the members of the research department at the military academy before the war. In the picture is David Schiller, Cecilia Eileen, and Henry Slessor. Slessor was supposedly a Daikun loyalist who was a professor at the military academy. His ties to Daikun led to a desk job manning the Good Work Squad. Cecilia was always a Gihren loyalist, and Schiller left the military due to an illness and joined the Department of Public Safety and Peace. And then the attempted assassination on Gihren happened, and every Daikun loyalist was arrested. Everyone except Slessor. David Schiller's last known whereabouts was him going to arrest Slessor, but he left without arresting him and was never seen again. What happened during that conversation? Back at Command HQ, Brigadier General Slessor gets a visit from a man named Kyle Klein. Klein wastes no time and ponders to his face why David Schiller never arrested him a year ago. Slessor says that he must be mistaken because his charges were dropped. He then switches the subject to Granada being in a state of chaos and without a commander. Specifically, there is too much of a divide between the Kycelia faction and the Gihren faction. Klein goes into detail about Gihren murdering those who oppose him and even threatening to nuke Side 6. Of course, this is referring to the Cyclops team and the events that happened in War in the Pocket. He is essentially stating that Kycelia knows of Valkyrie and their plan to assassinate Gihren, and she too wants them to go through with the plan. The problem is that they are concerned what will happen in the aftermath of this situation. He believes that the people of Zeon will declare themselves a republic once again and make peace with EFF. Klein gives Slessor a memory card. It contains a video recording of Char at Granada after talking to Fieseller. He is alone and he takes off his mask. Slessor recognizes that Char is none other than Casseval Rem Daikun. Fieseller believes that Casseval could play a role in rebuilding a new Zeon. In Mobile Suit Gundam, Fieseller tells Char that he knows he is Casseval. I assume she knows because of this video, even though in the show she mentions that she kind of knew who she was from the beginning. I am sure this video is what solidified that notion. Klein leaves Slessor, one of Fieseller's personal Musai-class ships, in his presence as a sign of trust. Klein is putting a lot of faith in Slessor right now, as he could report this to Command HQ. He leaves and lets him make that decision for himself. At Command HQ, Phileas and the battalion are planning a test procedure when the Royal Guard and the battalion start to butt heads. They make fun of the battalion for missing limbs. Lance goes out and fights one of the units for insulting their pride. Phileas takes off towards the fight. Lance in the Goof Custom and the Royal Guard in the F2 start to fight one another. He throws the F2 with ease. The commander comes in and stops them from continuing. He says he will file a formal complaint on Lance. After talking to Reinhardt, he heads out and tries to find a place, as he is now a wanted man. Reinhardt tells him that since the war has started, 1/3 of Zeon's population is dead. Because of this, there is so much of the colony that isn't populated anymore. So much so that the colony turns on lights in certain areas to give the illusion that people are still living there. She suggests that he use this as an opportunity. At Abawaku, Fieseller is looking over the new Gihren mobile suit. She wonders why the Psychomu system is offline, and this is because all of the test pilots couldn't handle it. And more specifically, it is hard at the moment to find any new types because Gihren doesn't believe in new types. Fieseller says she will personally select the pilot. She is sure that she will be able to destroy the Gundam with Char's new Gelgoog and the Elmith. So we know that this occurs right before Amato's encounter with Lala. Meanwhile, Valkyrie hosts their final meeting and begins their plan. Phileas Stream is looking over the Weiss Rose, or White Rose, labeled Goof Custom. Back at the cafe, Leo is still talking with his contact Reinhardt. She wants to know about a situation regarding his first case with the Department of Public Safety. Leo goes to explain what it is like being in the colonies these days. There is a lack of diversification of thought. He goes to explain it doesn't matter how great something is for a nation. If the people aren't able to make that choice for themselves, all goodwill really won't help. Leo says that certainly the colonies have an abundance of media, but it is clear that they are pigeonholed into a state-approved way of thinking these days. He says that people like Reinhardt and the Underground are allowing a diversification of thought. It is clear that Leo stumbled onto this underground network during his investigation and decided to help them rather than expose them. Meanwhile, Elsie is running errands for Leo. She is mad that he is making her do this for him. She gets a call about keeping Leo out of jail and letting him continue his investigation. She is working on the side of Valkyrie. Valkyrie is continuing with their final mission. After the destruction of the Zabi family, Valkyrie plans on forming a provisional government. It is then that all the members will finally meet in person. At the Capital Defense Battalion building, Slessor is informing his men of the situation regarding the fact that Castle Rem Daikun is still alive. He wants to put his faith into the young Daikun member. His battalion sides with him. There are even retired civilians there willing to help out. December 28th, UC0079. At the same time, Rigel von Moore is informed of Slessor's intent. They realize that things are going down on the 31st. Everyone seems to be positioning themselves to be in the best place during that day. Gihren's guard members, Gaius Zamella and Vanessa Vermillion, are overlooking the delivery of the new Galbati Alpha. The MS-17 Galbati Alpha is quite possibly the Principality of Zeon's last mobile suit. It was intended to be the successor to the Gion, but once the Gelgoog became the standard towards the end of the war, it started using Gelgoog parts. After the fall of the Principality of Zeon, EFF took all of Zeon's data and eventually made the Galbati Beta. For more information on that mobile suit, check out our Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam videos. Its beam rifle is the same as the Gelgoog. It also has a beam saber and a beam shield, as well as a special knuckle shield. This is a shield that rests on the forearm of the unit and has 2 additional spikes on the knuckles. Leo and Elsie head to the Climate Administration Bureau. Elsie wonders why they are there. Leo explains that he smelled something something similar to RDX, which is the successor of TNT used mainly for military purposes. Leo was assigned to this case after the 7th explosion went off. The Climate Administration has sensors all throughout the colony collecting data on the artificial environment. He has to take the environmental data and cross-examine it with the data that he has on the explosion. This will determine if the military was involved in these explosions. Lance meets with Slessor. Their plan is good to go. Slessor tells Lance that if Cassaval is alive, then what Jim Barral told him must be true, that Degwin planned Xion's murder. Slessor says that he isn't even sure if Gihren is in Zoom City or if he is on Abawaku. Leo wonders how one would get weapons like a bomb into the colony. It is near impossible for a normal citizen to accomplish this. He also notes that there are several points in the city that are uninhabited. It is very possible for a mobile suit to do damage in these areas. He also notes that physics on the colony work differently than that on Earth. It would definitely require precision that only would come from knowing the climate data. The military has an access code that works with the climate system. It is easy to access and something that the people would most likely overlook. Leo looks at the log file. He sees that the name Harist has accessed the file. Meanwhile, the writer or artist failed at translating his own names properly. He continues looking to see that Lance accessed these files recently as well. Leo is confused about what is going on. He looks into the administration's security system. He finds that everything has been erased, except for one image file. It is fragmented, but it looks like an explosion. In Phileas's quarters, he gets a video message from Eric Mansfield. Eric is on his way to Abawaku. He tells Phileas that he is proud of him and the team for everything they have been through. Leo is going through data on his phone. He wonders why the chief gave him a whole 2 hours instead of arresting him immediately. It is clear there was something that the chief wanted Leo to see. He sees a pic of his grandfather. That is when he finally makes the call and tries to get in contact with him. Back at Command HQ, Cecilia is meeting with Rigel von Moore and some other men. Rigel tells Cecilia of Slessor's attempt to make a move on the 31st. She leaves it in Rigel's hands to handle the situation. Cecilia casually mentions that Gihren is no longer on Side 3. This casual mention of Giren's location is very important. As Rigel now knows the location of Gihren, he informs Regenleaf and the Valkyrie team. Meanwhile, Elsie is nervous. She makes a call. She needs to talk to Cecilia regarding Leo immediately. December 29th, UC0079, Side 3, Rosante Colony. Leo is mad that he spent an entire day trying to find his grandfather's location. Elsie can sense that something is wrong with him, but it isn't his grandpa or Lance that is on his mind. He says he will tell Elsie when the time comes. They finally find the Hoth Fieseller estate. Leo meets with Hoth. He asks his grandfather about Regenleaf. Hoth says that he is Regenleaf, or at least he used to be. It isn't a specific person, but a codename given to carry out covert operations for the Zabi family. The year was UC0050. Degwin, Hoth, and a few others created an underground railroad of the sorts and steals resources from the moon. The moon had all the resources needed for the colonies to remain independent from EFF. Not only that, but Degwin and his covert group sent whispers throughout the colonies, giving everyone just a slight push they need towards revolution. It shows that even though Degwin may have used Xion Zoom Daikum and even rode off the coattails of his ideas of controlism, he still fought hard in the early years to create an autonomous zone for Muzno. Over time, this network grew to involve EFF members and other various high-ranking members. Many fled to Side 3, and it became the colony of industry providing for other colonies. Hoth says this is as far as he has gone with the name Regenleaf. He says that the Syndicate and Regenleaf is most certainly used to this day. He says that no matter what, Regenleaf will not betray the Zabi family. Leo tells his grandfather that the data says otherwise, and points to Regenleaf's involvement with Sasuro Zabi. Hoth then goes into the antagonizing nature between Gihren and Sasuro. Had Sasuro not been assassinated, he and Gihren would destroy the colonies from the inside, even before becoming a principality. Essentially, what Hoth is getting at in this moment is that the Zabi family knew this, and because they knew this, they made a choice. Who dies, Gihren or Sasuro? And of course, we know they chose Sasuro. He goes on to say that this isn't betraying the Zabi family, but rather helping the family.
Hoth wonders why he left the family and tells him it is because he treated his parents with disrespect. December 30th, UC 0079. Leo and Elsie are on a shuttle making their way back to Zoom City. Leo plans on visiting Lance in the Officers Club later in the day. Elsie wants him to be careful considering he might be a part of Valkyrie. As they are talking, the shuttle veers off course. The pilot informs the passengers that the military has diverted their course. They both look out to see the once Maharu colony converted into the colony laser. This causes Leo to flash back to a time when he was once on Earth and still in the military. He is in Australia looking at the remains of what was once Sydney. Leo begins shaking Elsie like a baby and starts yelling, "What is going on?" He apologizes and gets some rest. Later, Elsie gives a briefing on Leo to Cecilia. She thinks that he will be useful to them. She tells her about Slessor's plan to hold his revolt during the ceremony. Cecilia asks if Elsie is sure that her personal feelings aren't getting in the way. She tells Elsie to let him die in dire situations moving forward and not to help him out. In Zoom City, the battalion begins closing down the streets and preparing for the event. Vanessa is dealing with a battalion officer. Giren's guard isn't a part of the battalion and can break rank, but the platoon leader isn't having any of it. Vanessa talks to Gaius. She doesn't understand how there is an assassination attempt on Gihren when he isn't even here. She thinks that the battalion is planning something else besides just the already known rebellion. Back at the Officers Club, Leo meets with Lance. He doesn't waste any time. He pulls out the picture he found on the Climate Administration's security database. Lance said that he left that for Leo specifically, but never thought that he would find it so fast. Suddenly, Slessor comes in and introduces himself. Leo just comes out and asks about Regenleaf and why David Schiller didn't arrest him the night he disappeared. Slessor says that he told Schiller just who has the most to gain. At the beginning of the war, Gihren needed to strengthen his forces. Now, at the end of the war, Zeon has been driven from Earth and Solomon is lost. Essentially, they are in the same position they were a year ago. The only difference is that this time, they plan on taking out Slessor and the battalion in the process. This is because their intended goal. He tells Leo that the battalion's motto is the Shield of Zeon. They are not there just to protect Zeon and the capital, but rather the will of Zeon, which lived inside Zeon Zum Daikum. Now that he believes that Casseval is the answer, Command HQ won't allow it. The clock strikes midnight. Slessor must take his leave. Leo tries to ask him what they plan on doing today, but he has already left the room. December 31st. UC 0079. An explosion happens within Zoom City. A few Higans are patrolling a neighborhood. The MS-12 Higan is a prototype artillery mobile suit. This unit is a two-seater, one pilot and one gunner. This unit has a 180mm recoilless cannon attached to the top of its head. It also has a 120mm 4-barrel machine gun mounted on its forearm. The Higans spot that the explosion came from the Climate Administration. Suddenly, the Higans are destroyed. It is the Shield of Zeon making their attack. Everyone assumed that they were going to attack in the daytime during the ceremony, but they didn't waste any time and made their attack at the strike of midnight. Back at the Officers Club, Lance makes his leave. Lance says that even though he was faster than he thought, he is still too slow. A team goes in to intercept the battalion. They are on foot, but they are able to organize to strategically take out a mobile suit. Slessor makes his way back to the battalion HQ. Everything seems to be going according to plan. But Slessor wants to start moving outside of Side 3. He wants to start making a move on the colony laser. Back at Command HQ, all hell is breaking loose. Rigel has divided the forces, so they are currently in a weakened state. Cecilia starts to realize what is going on. They were trying to figure out Giren's location. She realizes that if Gihren didn't go to a Bawaku, he wouldn't have divided his royal guard into two teams. Cecilia also knows that Mansfield's team wouldn't do anything. Rigel is clearly outed as a double agent. Cecilia asks why he is still even here after figuring out where Gihren is. He says that if he fled, Command HQ would suspect something. He attempts to get out one last Sig Zeon before getting shot in the face for treason. Cecilia mentions that this teasing nature is something that her mentor, David Schiller, would do. Meanwhile, on Side 6, Jean-Marie Socrates finally finds David Schiller. David mentions that if he is here, then Zoom City must be in chaos. The coup is in effect. Back at the Capital Defense Battalion Field Headquarters, Slessor is given a report from the Scout Platoon in Section 7. There seems to be two Rickdoms fighting a Zaku platoon. They were able to wipe out an entire platoon already. One more is on its way, but things are not looking good. One soldier tells them that they need backup. Slessor has no choice but to send out Lance. Gaius Zamella is piloting a Rick-Dom, taking out the battalion's Zaku 2 Kai with ease. Another Zaku comes in from behind, but Gaius purposefully left himself open and attacks when least expected. Gaius hopes it remains this easy, or they will have to send in Phileas. However, the battalion notes that 8 Zakus have been taken out and assume it is Phileas' doing. Lance goes out, overconfidently superseding his commander's words. The battalion begins using their Magella attack tanks. They take aim towards the other end of the city and fire. It is heading towards Gaius and Giren's guards. This attack is strong enough to potentially blow a hole in the colony. They aren't messing around anymore. Out of nowhere, Lance in the Goof Custom sidekicks Gaia. Char would be proud. He whips out his sword and starts slicing limbs. He pins down the Rick-Dom. At a federal building, a car pulls up. Someone flashes their credentials and pulls through. This is the final meeting place of some members of Valkyrie. The team is finally meeting as they raise a glass to the sound of cannon fodder. The final person shows up. G-men come bursting through the room, and they lay waste to the majority of the Valkyrie members, eliminating most of the evidence. They had to see this coming, right? Wouldn't you? The G-men relay to Cecilia that Valkyrie is taken care of. Vanessa Vermillion gets into the Rick-Dom. As she heads out of the hangar, a series of rounds, followed by the blade of Lance's goof, comes towards her face. She barely dodges the attack. Lance uses his magnetic grappler to disarm the Rick-Dom. She throws her shield lance and retreats. Unfortunately, Vanessa is not strong at short-range combat. She pulls out her beam saber and tries to kite the goof around the buildings, but the goof went the other way and cuts her off and slices her arm. Lance tries to get her to surrender, but it isn't happening. He goes in and attacks Vanessa, but he is merely attacked. It just so happens to be Phileas in the Galbati Alpha. Leo looks out at Zoom City falling. Elsie is wondering why Leo is out here in the rubble. He looks over at Elsie and simply asks, "Where is Commander Gihren Zabi?" She doesn't understand what he is getting at. He changes the subject to the other day when they were at the Climate Administration Bureau. She saw Lance Garfield's name in the data files. She saw that something wasn't right with the battalion, and yet Command HQ does nothing. They allowed the attack to play out. Elsie could have prevented this days ago. It is clear Leo knows that she is working against him. It seems Command HQ wants to paint Leo a certain way, but he simply wants to tell the truth. He asks Elsie once again, "Where is Commander Gihren Zabi?" She tells him that he no longer is on Side 3. Leo walks away. Elsie has the documents regarding the meeting with Kyle Klein in her hands. She wonders why she didn't tell Leo about this information. Phileas and Lance engage in battle. He is actually able to keep up with one of the top Xeon pilot with only one arm. He patches through to Slessor. Lance tells him that he is going to be selfish and fight this Galbati. This is the perfect opportunity to move forward with the plan. Slessor understands and allows him to fight. Not that order matters anymore during this coup. The two continue battling. Vanessa gets out of her Rick-Dom. She is able to contact Gaius. He is alive. She goes to find his Rick-Dom. Slessor informs his men that they will now put Niflheim into operation. The Xeon soldiers are out fighting, but one platoon stops. As the attacks have stopped, they look out into the distance. It starts snowing. Clearly, they are messing with the Climate Admin Bureau and made the colony extremely cold, as it is minus 47 degrees Celsius. One lieutenant notes that once the moisture is gone, the air will thin out, and that is most likely when they will make their attack. Unfortunately, he believes by this time, all of them will be long dead by the cold, making it easy for the resistance to clean house. He doesn't know what to do in this situation. He is informed that the turrets are also malfunctioning under the extreme cold. Suddenly, the snow stops. It looks like they are on their way. At the Parliament, Oleg notes that 86 people in total came to the Emergency Assembly of Parliament. This is a pathetic amount of Parliament members, and Oleg mentions how horrible it all is. Oleg contemplates that he currently holds the highest position in Zoom City, as everyone else is out at war and Darchia is on the moon. Someone informs Oleg of the battalion's attack. He gathers all the leaders in his office. Oleg says that if Darchia planned this from the beginning, he may need to rethink his friendship with him. Command HQ is informed of the drop in the climate. None of the soldiers are wearing winter equipment, and it is only a matter of time till the frostbite kicks in. The only equipment that seems to work at these temperatures are mobile suits. The defense battalion happens to be wearing winter clothing. It seems that there isn't a surplus of winter equipment either, as that was all abandoned on Earth, because usually that is the only place a Spacenoid would ever need to experience cold on that level. We learn because the defense battalion is mainly ceremonial, they happen to get all the surplus of weapons and BDUs. The defense battalion were steps ahead years before the coup. Command HQ calls for a retreat. Command only has 12 functioning mobile suits currently, and they are worried. One soldier suggests that they turn off the artificial sun, but the commander yells at him for even thinking of doing such a thing to the capital. The elite guard commander sees this as a failure on his part. He plans on going out into battle with his troops. He suggests that Cecilia retreat and meet up with Gihren at a Bawaku. She hopes the commander gives a wonderful performance. Vanessa has met with Gaius. They spy on elite guard soldiers holding out on top of a building. Gaius notes that the average mobile suit battle lasts 3 minutes, but Lance and Phileas have been fighting for 30 minutes straight. Phileas takes off the training wheels on his beam saber, and the two begin fighting again. This next chapter is a battle between Phileas and Lance, and I definitely won't do the artwork justice, so you just gotta go check it out with your own eyes. Gaius and Vanessa run up a building and watch the fight. It has become a battle of swords. They bob and weave as they move about the urban landscape. Vanessa notes that Lance changed his stance. Phileas outputs his beam saber to 100% and slashes the goof's right arm. Lance would be dead if he didn't change stances. Quite fitting for Lance. He takes a jab at himself, saying that this is only the second time that someone has taken his arm. Vanessa is concerned for Phileas. She grabs a gun and tries to do something to help. Leo is currently heading towards Command HQ, but is getting blocked. He sees the Zabi castle in the background. Lance recognizes that Phileas took his limiter off the beam saber, which means its power won't last long. But Lance is exhausted as well. The Galbati Alpha stands up and drops its shield. Phileas changes to a dueling stance. Lance notes that this pilot still has honor on the battlefield and is happy. This is exactly the type of honor that Zeon should instill. He couldn't be any prouder for his nation. The two charge at one another. Gaius screams out for Phileas. Slessor is informed that both the Goof and the Galbati have gone silent. They move forward with the plan. A soldier comes rushing in with an encrypted message from Kyle Klein. He opens up the letter and his face is in shock. It contains 2 messages. Leader Gihren has killed Degwin, and Major General Caecilia executes Gihren. Slessor wonders what is going on at a Bawaku. Gaius and Vanessa open up the hatch on the Galbati to find Phileas crying. He is alive, but he says that at the very last moment, Lance went easy on him. It was supposed to be an honorable battle, but he went easy in the end. Gaius mentions that this will probably haunt Phileas for his entire life, as he will never be able to know the outcome of this battle, and he is just a kid. He notes that this is quite cruel. I mean, he's a child. All of this is Fubar. Leopold goes to talk to Cecilia. He was supposed to meet with her anyways regarding the reinstallation of his investigator status. Cecilia's first job for him is to arrest Slessor for treason. He says he will, but first he has one more thing to take care of. He stands up and says that Cecilia is under arrest as a pivotal figure in the events surrounding the assassination attempt on His Excellency Gihren. She tells him to elaborate on this so-called investigation. He says that her downfall was her negligence. Her attitude towards the parade happening no matter what and handling the investigation in silence showed that she cared more about capturing an assassin more so than keeping Commander Zabi safe. Furthermore, a long time ago, Regenleaf attempted a similar assassination. Everyone involved in that situation was killed, all but Slessor. She monitored Slessor gaining the ranks and creating the defense battalion. She pushed and nudged Slessor into creating a rebellion over the course of the years since the last assassination attempt. One thing she wanted was to isolate Caecilia from the event. He notes that this plan was exposed via the EDA programming language. Only 5 people in the world have the ability to use said language. One, Mario Antonescu, who is currently assassinated, was one of those people. Cecilia says that he seems to be leaving out a good chunk of info. This is where Leo states that he just received a piece of info himself. Gihren Zabi is not on Side 3. He was never planning on being on Side 3 during this parade. So why did Cecilia continue with the operation? Cecilia recognizes that Elsie has chose to help Leo instead of her commanding officer. She pulls out a gun and gives him 3 options. He cooperates, he forgets everything, or he continues to seek out the truth. It seems this was an attempt to point fingers at Caecilia. Unlike the last assassination attempt, this one was simply to silence those who don't believe in Gihren's fascist ideals. He tells Cecilia that even her is not above the law. Cecilia says that Elsie will be sad for him. But right before she pulls the trigger, Vice Prime Minister Oleg comes in. She informs Cecilia that a Bawaku has fallen. It seems that they are unsure if the Federation plans on attacking Site 3 and must make plans for countermeasures just in case. But Cecilia breaks down, crying for Gihren. Oleg wants Leo to be able to tell the actual truth and finish his investigation. A ceasefire is announced to the Capital Defense soldiers. January 1st, UC-0080. The elite guard was absorbed into the National Guard after the ceasefire. During this time of chaos, a provisional government was formed. As a sign of goodwill, Slessor signed the ceasefire agreement. Zoom City finally achieved peace, even though the war is at an end. January 3rd, UC-0080. Jean-Marie Socrates meets up with the Capital Defense Commander, Lautrec Hamilton. He asks Jean how David Schiller is. It seems that David and Gihren have been having conversations on a secure line as they talk and play chess with one another every day. The commander doesn't understand why Gihren would talk to a person who attempted to assassinate him. Jean mentions that his purpose in this adventure was all luck. Once David disappeared, he happened to be the one assigned to clean his desk, and when doing so, found a note that said, "If I were to disappear, don't look for me, wait for instructions." Jean was also the one who left the Valkyrie letter on Leo's desk. Lautrec goes on to explain how Schiller was able to maintain contact through coded messages from the opera. From this conversation, we learn that Lautrec is a part of Valkyrie this whole time. Even though he told Slessor he wanted nothing to do with the rebellion, it seems he was the one pushing Slessor. We meet with Grandpa Hoth Fieseller meeting with Elsie. He talks about in the days of Zionic, in order to know what the military wanted, they planted people within the military to get an edge on acquiring government contracts. But sometimes other information falls through the cracks, which leads to situations like this rebellion. He knew that Lautrec was in contact with David Schiller and also mentions that Leo getting a job with the Department of Public Safety was all according to plan. However, he didn't step in until Leo was assigned to the bombing incident. Leo asked Hoff to do one more favor for him. Back at a Side 3 spaceport, all hell is breaking loose as people are trying to escape Xi'an before the Federation comes in, takes control of the now Republic. Gaius, Vanessa, and Phileas are in disguise and trying to escape. They are confused why the Fieseller family wants to help them. Leo walks up to the three. He says that he is doing this as a last request from his teacher. He looks at Phileas and asks, "How is Lance?" Phileas says that he is a strict teacher. After these events, Leopold went on to become a member of the lower house of parliament. Elsie bailed from Zoom City for 3 years. After laying low, she returned and acts as the Fieseller family secretary. Slessor was court-martialed and sentenced to death. He was given amnesty and now serves out a life sentence instead. The investigator's request to confirm his current well-being was denied. Cecilia handed herself over to the Federation. Darcia Baharo went on to work with EFF to return Xi'an to a republic. David Schiller's whereabouts are currently unknown. Gaius, Vanessa, and Phileas go on to work for Anaheim Electronics under false identities and eventually go on to work for Karaba during the Grips conflict. In UC-0093, during the Second Neo-Xi'an War, a team, Gyaradogas, were seen with the Shield of Xi'an emblem. After that, they were never seen on the battlefield again. As of UC-0085, Xi'an was no longer in control of the investigation, and all information has been handed over to Earth Federation Survey Program. And that will conclude the plot to Assassinate Gihren. Both the first chapter and the last chapter of this manga are titled The Plot to Assassinate Gihren. However, both chapters take on completely different connotations the more information we learn along the way. Valkyrie itself was essentially a false flag operation to frame Caecilia, and Slessor's rebellion was actually the true Xi'an freedom fighters. The irony of blaming your sister for your assassination. Who is Regenleaf? It actually doesn't matter, but it is truly hard to pinpoint which person involved was Regenleaf. Certainly Lautrec was a member of Valkyrie this whole time without even Slessor knowing, and he mentions a former Regenleaf helped them out, which leads me to believe Hoth Fieseller truly is no longer Regenleaf, and it could be Lautrec. But David Schiller's close friendship to Gihren and Cecilia, and all of this being a ruse to frame Caecilia, leaves me to think it could have also been Schiller. Now that this data is in the hands of the Federation, we will probably never know. This isn't my favorite Gundam media, but it absolutely is the best written story told in the Gundam franchise. End of sentence. This won't be the last time that we will run into Leo. He will show up once we cover the return of Johnny Ridden. But until then, new types, remember to never believe in